Okay. Good morning. Dzień dobry. Witam wszystkich serdecznie na dzisiejszym seminarium. Dzisiejsze seminarium jest zorganizowane dzięki programowi Regionalna Inicjatywa Doskonałości, który jest realizowany na UWM w Olsztynie. Mamy dziś przyjemność zaprezentować naszego specjalnego gościa, profesora Miquela Lurlinga z Uniwersytetu Wageningen. I pan profesor zaprezentuje ciekawe bardzo materiały na temat kontroli eutrofizacji i kontrolowania zakwitów sinicowych. Są to doświadczenia z Holandii. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce our today presenter, Professor Miquel Lurling from Wageningen University, the Netherlands. Professor Lurling is a very known specialist about lake restoration and Cyanobacterial, and today Professor will present speech about managing eutrophication and controlling cyanobacterial blooms, experiences from the Netherlands. Okay, enjoy the presentation. Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Renata. I hope you can all hear me loud and clear. For me, it's a bit weird seeing a screen in front of me and I have no idea who is online. But I would like to start with thanking Professor Renata Gustiniak for inviting me over all the way to the Masurian Lakes and to share all the great work they're doing on lake restoration, giving some nice insights for the works that are going on here. So it's a great pleasure to see that and to get more information about that, because well, as the title of my presentation already tells you, we really need all the efforts to manage eutrophication and to control cyanobacterial blooms. And I will share some experiences from the Netherlands. And as Renata already mentioned, I'm affiliated to the Wageningen University, to the Aquatic Ecology and Water Quality Management Group. I'm also a part of the Aquatic Knowledge Center Wageningen that is aimed to translate fundamental research into the field of practice, and also affiliated to the SIL, co-chairing the work group on lake restoration together with my colleague Brian Spears, and we try to get as much knowledge on lake restoration together so we learn from each other, and we will be able to well, at least to mitigate or reduce the impact of eutrophication that is unfortunately still growing in size and magnitude worldwide. So far, my short introduction. Well, let's go to the status of the lakes. I will mostly, well, actually entirely focusing on lakes in my country, the Netherlands. Well, it's depicted here, a number of lakes, small number is being reported to Brussels, next to Poland there. Well, we can of course plot this differently in the percentage scale, and then the Netherlands is almost at the top. So our lakes are, all of them are in moderate to very bad ecological condition, whereas Poland is some over there, so you also have quite some lakes that are in a good ecological condition. So from that angle, in Poland, you're already doing better than we are. Well, having virtually all lakes in a bad condition may look a bit weird if you realize that the Netherlands has among the best wastewater treatment plants on the planet. On the Yale Environment Performance Index, it ranks second after Singapore, and about well, over 99% of the inhabitants are connected to sewage system, and phosphorus and nitrogen removal is up to 87% at this moment, and we have roadmaps to further increase that towards 2030 or even 2050, and hopefully reaching 99 or eventually full retrieval of nutrients. Well, despite that, despite this good point source pollution, we have these eutrophic conditions in our water bodies, and this has everything to do with diffuse loads that are ongoing and the legacies from the past. So many years of poorly treated wastewater entering surface waters and accumulating in lakes, and now we have diffuse loads on top of that. And in reports from the European Union, you can see that the main pressure nowadays on Dutch waters is diffuse pollution, and diffuse pollution is mainly coming from agricultural activities. And they claim here that 90% of the water bodies are affected by that. So we all know that external sources that may accumulate in lakes and building up large legacies in the sediment. That's why it's so important to include also your sediments in your overall analysis, because often this will still remain a problem. I said eutrophication is problematic in the Netherlands. It's the #1 water quality issue, and it will give rise to cyanobacterial blooms in many surface waters. This picture that you can see here with the boat, that's one of the rivers, the River Meuse, turned into a massive green soup in 2018 and 2019. This is a huge bloom of Mycocystis aeruginosa. So a river turning into a green, I've never seen that before. So this is a nice insight in what we may experience more frequently in the near future. And of course, our inland waters that may have all kind of nice colors, ranging from purple in winter or spring with plankton rubescence to green or orange or all kind of colors during growing season, during summer. Well, it's not the colors that worry us, but it's the toxins that can be produced by the cyanobacteria. So in this picture here, the different colors indicate different variants of mycocystins. Just look at the total numbers. Mycocystin concentrations in some of those water bodies go up to tens of thousands of micrograms per liter. We still have swimming prohibitions when mycocystins go above 20 micrograms per liter. The new World Health Organization guideline is 24 micrograms per liter. So you can imagine this is much higher, and these are really potential risks for people that come in contact with these water or want to make use of the water. So that's one of the main reasons why we would like to reduce all these massive blooms. And to do so, well, because we do have ongoing diffuse pollution and legacies from the past, this makes that in-lake measures, in-lake actions, that they are inevitable. But in doing so, you should realize there is not such a thing as a magic solution. Don't believe in magic solutions. There is no silver bullet. Each lake is unique, and this means that each lake needs a proper diagnosis before you're going to do something. And so don't believe those glossy brochures that they have the solution and it will work everywhere, because these things simply do not exist. And your diagnosis, your system analysis will help you in defining which measures will be most promising for your lake. And this always comes down to tailor-made solutions. So that's the first take-home message. There's no silver bullet. Do a proper diagnosis before acting, please. So what are we doing in the Netherlands? Are we following this? Well, not always. Well, maybe in a minority of the cases we are doing, but we do a lot of other things. Very popular are public-oriented measures, putting up information signs, and a lot of things are directed against blooms themselves, fighting the symptoms, and the more costly source-oriented measures are often the least popular. Well, about public-oriented measures, you would like to change the habit of people, try to prevent children playing with green soups or others dancing in cyanobacterial. I have no idea what this guy is doing here, why he is inside cyanobacterial bloom. Of course, people go fishing when there are cyanobacterial blooms, so there's a lot of contact with them. And one of the worrying things we notice is that children experience that if if they paint themselves green and let it dry in the sun, they will turn into a smurf and it becomes more bluish. So these things we do not like to see, and we want to inform people about that. Some water authorities are very good in that. They make fantastic information signs, put them along many of the service waters to inform the audience, and then it contains information like, please do not feed the fish too much, do not feed the ducks too much, remove dog litter. That kind of information is in there. Also information about cyanobacteria. Do not go into the water. Do not let your dog have a swim when the water is very green, etc., etc. But this is more an exception. Because this is more reality. You can find all kind of different notes, signs everywhere, and sometimes it's not even clear what's being warned for anymore. So also from the information point of view, I think we could learn a lot, but at least the authorities think that they are acting in compliance with the European Bathing Water Directive, that they are at least informing the public. And sometimes you will see signs like this. It says ice is irreliable, and underneath be aware for cyanobacteria. So this sign is there all year round, and then of course it loses its function. There's also a nice one. Be careful of cyanobacteria, but then the water authority decided to install a fountain, so spraying all kind of aerosols on the walking path nearby, and thereby actually exposing citizens to aerosols that they may with cyanobacteria. So also interesting things you may encounter. Going to effect-oriented measures, very popular, of course, trying to fight the symptoms, try to prevent scum formation. Or scum formation, that's the accumulation of cyanobacterial biomass at the water surface, and usually it's blown to one side of the lake to the lee side of the shore, where you can have massive accumulations. And you could try to prevent inflow of this accumulation, or you can remove it, try to kill it, do something about the bad smell that comes from it. A lot of things are being done there and proposed. And we can have, they go to physical methods. Sorry for the disturbance here. Somebody, I think, wanted to enter. That's can happen, no problem. Anyway, a lot of measures are being proposed and also being applied. We can group them in physical, chemical, biological measures. Some of them are promising, but quite a few of them, they come already with very interesting or dubious claims, like the CBX, for instance. Fantastic. Mr. Deroux was promoting it. He told me that this would be very effective against blue-green algae because it contains rare cyanobacteria. So I was like, what? He didn't know that the blue-green algae are cyanobacteria, so that was a funny one. Bioactive is also really amazing. You can simply buy this in the shop, and it brings oxygenium in the water. I had a look at the latest version of the periodic table. Maybe a new element had been discovered. I have no idea what is oxygenium, but then it works according to a specific homeopathic resonance frequency. For that maybe. And if you open the package, it's simply calcium carbonate. So you pay 25 euros for 1 kilogram of calcium carbonate. Well, to me, that's simply a rip-off and complete nonsense. Mudballs will come back to that later because it's also fun. Physical measures, well, screens are being implemented. You try to prevent the inflow of cyanobacteria from one side to a beach area, for instance. If you really look at the color of the water, it does not look that effective. And if we have a look from above, here's the screen, there's the beach. Well, actually, there's a large lake here, about 800 hectare size. The screen is supposed to protect the beach from cyanos, but as you can see, the wind waves are simply too high. They throw the cyanobacteria over it. And by having a screen here now, they have created a perfect trap, because everything that's in there, if the wind turns, it will not be able to remove anymore. And so here the screen didn't work out as the authorities wanted it to work out. Some other sites, dams were made. Dams, of course, are very effective. This is outside the dam, here's inside the dam. The dam was there only for a couple of years. This is in the site near a large camping. The the visitors to the campsite started to complain with the owner that they could not go out with their boats anymore. So after a couple of years, the owner removed the dams again, and now he has to deal with cyanobacteria that flow in from the larger lake outside regularly. And in harbors, etc., you can try to remove accumulated material, which you can see here, or suck it out. It's being done here. But sucking it out, it means transport of a lot of water. So this is very costly. Yeah, there is a boat that's trying to skim off accumulated material as well. And these things are also meant to suck out water with floating material. Expensive, but just illustrates how desperate authorities are. And some other techniques that are being used, or at least being promoted, is to use coagulants and try to separate algal biomass with water already before it leaves it, and then maybe the biomass can be used for other stuff. All mechanical units, mobile units that can be placed next to harbors, they can do 50 cubes per hour, or up to 200 cubic meters per hour. So you can do this in relatively small systems, but not in very big lakes. To be honest, I've not seen this one in action. I know that there is a promotion video on YouTube, but I'm not aware of any case studies where they actually tried this one out. Other things that are being done, bubbled screens, trying to prevent the inflow of cyanobacteria. This is near a harbor area. Here you can see the screen as well, and nearby it's bubbling, but it's not that effective as hoped. Well, bubbling and mixing is also quite popular. Another harbor area, you can see a mixer here trying to prevent the accumulation, but the mixer, of course, you can already see this in this picture, moves the accumulated material into the dead corners and into dead zones where you get massive accumulation and bad smells. So it's just a displacement of what happens. It may, only in very specific spots reduce the accumulation, but you get a displacement. Mixing in shallow waters is actually not a good thing to do. These are results from an experiment in enclosures we did many years ago, 2007, as you can see. This is a graph lake concentration, simply aeration, shallow water 1.5 meters, and control and pond. And you can see that by mixing, you boost chlorophyll A, and these are cyanobacterial chlorophyll A. So you're making a mixing reactor. That's actually what you're doing if you mix in shallow waters. So mixing shallow waters, don't do this if you want to get rid of cyanobacteria, because it will not work. It may even aggravate your systems. Mixing in deep lakes, however, is still being done in many places. It may reduce blooms. This is a case from the Netherlands, in the city of Amsterdam. This is Lake Nieuwemeer, and there are some mixing devices installed there. You can even see them on Google Earth. You can see the aeration, the mixing happening there. There's a new system now, if I'm correct. So after 25 years, they reinstalled a new one because it reduced the nuisance of cyanobacteria quite tremendously. A lot of studies has been done from the group of Professor Jeff Huisman from Peter Visser from University of Amsterdam. One of their nice monitoring results given here. Without mixing, they had cyanobacteria, and with mixing, they shifted the entire phytoplankton community to diatoms. There's no reduction in biomass, but just a shift in the species composition, because you're not doing anything about nutrients. You just move cyanobacteria in a less favorable competitive position. That's how it works at deep mixing. They did some experiments in 2003. They had the mixing switched on here, here, and here, and switched off here, here, and there. And when it was switched off, of course, stratification popped in, and immediately you saw microcystis coming up. The line indicates their modeling, and the dots, the measurements they had. So mixing in this lake would prevent blooms of microcystis, and they have quite some information in review articles as well, if you want to know more about that. Then another heavily promoted physical method is the use of low energy ultrasound. And already 2006, 2007, did quite a few laboratory experiments. And as you can see here, this is a control and this is a treatment. You can still see cyanobacteria floating on top. We didn't find any proof for loss of buoyancy. So the claim is that with ultrasound, they would bring gas vesicles into resonance, and then the gas vesicles would collapse and cyanobacteria would sink. As a result, you would get less growth. But we didn't find any proof of that, and also no growth reduction of all kind of phytoplankton organisms that we tested in the laboratory. In the same period, a few field experiments were conducted. One was in the wastewater treatment basins, West Basin and East Basin. So one was treated with ultrasound, the other one was without. If you look at the graph lake concentration over the summer months, there is no difference. Same in the harbour area of Tolen, where about 13 ultrasound devices were installed. All the water is green, cyanus was still there. And all in all, the Cardinal and co-workers concluded that ultrasound could not prevent blooms and surface scums. Also, the National Water Authority stopped the trial with ultrasound in the harbour of Tolen because it didn't yield any results. And you can find more information about this if you look into the internet. But many of these are is grey literature, and there are not that many scientific studies about them. There are scientific studies about ultrasound, but this is often high power, high intensity ultrasound that we use to break down cells, and that sterilizes everything. And of course, you have to realize these things are not applicable outside in lakes. They're not applicable because of the energetic cost, because of the collateral damage, and because also the depth, the penetration depth of ultrasound in the water is rather limited. Well, experiments show it, and we also have physics to explain why you cannot crack gas vesicles with low frequency ultrasound. You can calculate resonance frequency and gas vesicles to bring them into resonance. You will need ultrasound into the megahertz frequencies. Well, having ultrasound in the megahertz frequencies means that you will have a very limited penetration depth in the water, about maybe 5 to 10 centimeters. So you cannot treat cyanobacteria with that. That's impossible in our universe. Or maybe in a parallel universe on the planet Ultrasonica it may work, but not in our universe. Our physical laws simply prohibit that. After these critiques on bringing gas vesicles into resonance, we noted that the working mechanism on certain sites of ultrasound producers has changed. Now they claim that ultrasound creates in the top layer a pressure band, but again, from a point source that is violating the Huygens principle. And it's also not in agreement with the law of Pascal, if you know that with 10 meters water depth, you already get 1 atmosphere of pressure on top of it. So interesting to read these things and be aware of that. Of course, you can always find and look for yourselves. There was an experiment done in the Netherlands a few years ago. So in 2016, 2017, some of the ultrasound devices were operating in one of the lakes. I think 4 of them were in there. These are just the monitoring data by the Water Authority, cyanobacterial biovolume and cyanobacterial growth A, without the 2 years without ultrasound, 2 years with ultrasound. And well, for me, there is no difference. And also, when you have very low amounts of cyanobacteria at start and when the devices are running, they're not capable of reducing the amount. So this is an example where these devices, these are not effective. It's always funny to look at brochures and to look at pictures. This also holds true for other products. Be aware for before, after pictures. This one is very green. Everything is much greener than after. This one is very nice. You can see, this after installing ultrasound, a lot of things happened. Shrubs here disappeared. Waste bin appeared. fountain appears. So there's a lot of things are different. This is also an interesting one. Before there is some floating algal biomass, and after it's gone. But also the trees, it's a little bit more brownish. I would say this may be summer, this may be autumn, and this is even more clear. This is here, the trees are green, and here they have no leaves. So where we are, this is summer, winter. So you have to be aware of those before, after pictures. Be critical about them. Let's move further to chemical measures. A lot of chemicals can also be purchased. We know this already from the pond shops. If you go in there, you can see massive amounts of things that you can buy to keep your pond clear of algae or whatever. This is a big tank with aluminium sulfate, hydrogen peroxide. A lot of products are available, and they're all intended to decimate or to remove cyanobacterial biomass, to kill it. One of the most tested products in the last years in the Netherlands is hydrogen peroxide. There was a special research permit given to treat a few dozen of lakes. This was coordinated by the University of Amsterdam, and the underlying idea is that cyanobacteria are more sensitive to hydrogen peroxide than our eukaryotic algae. It was dosed first in 2009 in a lake near Veendam in the north of the Netherlands. And the effects were really spectacular. So a rapid decline of Planctotrix agardii, and it stayed very low for many weeks. And also the toxins that were released upon lysis also declined rapidly. And so that was an interesting result there. We've done a lot of tests with water from different soils as well. And well, if you look at the photosynthesis efficiency, so the measure of the health of your cyanobacteria in waters with microcystic dominance, is quite a variability there. So some you need a low dose, and some you need a much higher dose to get. And this water, well, even at 12 milligrams per liter, it was not a sharp decline. With other cyanobacteria, it seems better, except for this lake. So there's some variability within lakes, depending on all kinds of characteristics. And this also comes forward in whole lake treatments. So in some lakes, the cyanobacteria were gone for at least 2 months, in others a few weeks. And of course, you do not remove nutrients, and this means that it's really an emergency tool, emergency chemical to be used. So cyanobacteria will return, and how long, that depends on how effective you were in reducing it to start off with. All kind of factors may be involved, presence of other algae. If your algae are, for instance, in mucus embedded colonies like microcystis, this is an experiment we did with a colonial form of the same strain and the unicellular one. Unicells are much more sensitive than colonies. If you have a lot of organic matter in your water or sulfides that all are being oxidized by hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide oxidizes organic matter. So if you use a concentration of that, you need to add more. But adding more, that may come with some side effects. Some experiments we did with zooplankton. This is survival in the concentration. If you add too much, you may have an impact on your zooplankton that may not be the desired outcome. But it depends, of course, on the severity of your water and why you want to get rid of the cyanobacteria. Hydrogen peroxide was also used as a quick fix in Lake Kralingen. That's a 114-hectare lake near the city of Rotterdam. 2 treatments were done in 2016. Maximum dosing 10 and 9 milligrams per liter. The cost were around 200,000 euros. And in the following year, there were lots of non-biting mosquitoes around there. That was an interesting phenomenon. Turned out that fish biomass was reduced by 93% after the treatments, and that gave a lot of unrest in the city council. Well, additional research was done. Direct effect on zooplankton definitely had occurred because of the iron peroxide dosing, which may of course have indirect effect on fish fry and fish. And the politicians were not amused, and they issued a 25-year ban on the use of iron peroxide, and also said that they didn't want to have no more experiments done. But if we look at the monitoring of the fish data, also in 2007, 2018, there was hardly any fish, and there was no recruitment, which is weird because the fish migration is possible. So and also big fish disappeared. So it's interesting to try to figure out why big fish would disappear after a relatively low dose of hydrogen peroxide that was only there for a limited amount of time. So for me, it's not that obvious that hydrogen peroxide was the cause of the kill there. And one of the reasons is because of this hampered reproduction afterwards, and also because oxygen deficiency does occur in the lake, and it has been identified as a cause of fish kills. So there might be it might be a coincidence that the treatment coincided with some later massive fish kills, but at least it's the overall impact is that it's now not allowed in the city of Rotterdam to use peroxide for upcoming 25 years. Then we go to biological measures. Well, we have a lot of them. I'll take a water first. I can't address all of them. Most of those measures are aimed to bring your water from a turbid to a clear state. So if you have reduced your nutrients, you might do something additional to maybe to remove sediment resistant fish to bring your water to a clear state. And this will only work if you have reduced your nutrient load far enough. Typical hysteresis plot in shallow waters, shallow lakes, above a certain nutrient load, your water will switch to a turbid state, and above this load, it will always be turbid. Yeah, so whatever you do, if you remove fish, it will return to a turbid state. It will remain turbid. So you have to push your nutrient load back below this critical level, this region. Here, it might work out. You may be able to switch your lake to a clear state. So that's the underlying science by all of these interventions. So I think most of you are aware of this plot of feedback mechanisms in shallow lakes published by Martin Schaffer and co-workers many years ago. A lot of rules have fish that resuspend sediments that increase turbidity. That has a negative impact on vegetation. Oops. Off you go. Don't. Okay. There is one thing missing in this plot, and that's a very important one. And I think it's also the reason why many biomanipulation or fish removal, bream removal attempts fail, and that's the sediment. You only talk about resuspended sediment, but the sediment compartment is often one of the most dominant steering factors releasing nutrients and that can be used by algae. So this is also recognized by Miquel and Ellen van Donk in their review of Dutch biomanipulation works that they published in 2002, in which they attributed that most of the failures are due to forgetting the internal loading, forgetting about the sediments. It doesn't okay. Another way of trying to get clear water is to improve the filtering capacity of waters. Dry salinity, for instance, can be very useful in that. So we did some experiments with dry salinity that we hatched on crates. We cut the crate in some pieces, put them in mesocosms, and you can see that in the control the waters remained turbid, and in the treatments there's a rapid decline, rapid clear water. As you can see from the Zaki disk here and there. This is just an empty crate in there. The control. Well, fantastic enclosure experiment results. Upscaling to an urban pond, small pond, 1.1 hectares, in which we placed 1,600 crates of Tricyanids. Well, this experiment failed, and it failed because the mussels simply didn't reproduce, and they died within 3 years' time. And so an experiment that looks fantastic in an enclosure experiment, well, on a more relevant scale, turned out to be well, not a good success, not a success at all, a failure, because of the of not reproducing. Because we worked with Cyanobacterial in this case, which is an invasive species. Well, we had a permit by the ministry, but it's no longer allowed to do these kind of things because of working with invasive species. So you cannot get a permit to put crates with Cyanobacterial in your water body. Then we have all sorts of so-called effective microbes that are being promoted. I already mentioned CBX, I will not go into that one. But I will spend some words on the mud balls. Because the mud balls were heavily promoted in 2006, which was another heatwave year. There were even questions raised in the national parliament by the Green Party, but there are false claims in the about successes in Finland in the questions. So we contacted the colleagues in Finland of what is this, and so this was complete nonsense. So just imagine how far these the advocates of these compounds go in misleading even politicians. It was an interesting case and also interesting to study. So we did all kind of experiments and testing different quantities. Well, bottom line is you cannot control cyanobacterial blooms with mud balls. And of course, it's great fun throwing mud balls in the lake. I can understand that. And there will definitely be a dose where it is highly effective. If you throw in that amount of mud balls that you fill up the entire water column, it will be effective, no doubt about that. But I don't think that's the intention of that, because you will have no water left. But in itself, it will not reduce your blooms, simply because you're not removing any nutrients. And the bacteria that you are adding, these are just normal bacteria. They're already in the lake in quantities much higher than the little additions that you do. And all these bacteria are also on the menu of crisis. And so they will be consumed anyway. You will not have a good result from that. Interestingly, in January 2015, the Water Authority added mud balls and solutions to an urban pond, which is fantastic because they are actually testing our lab works on a relevant scale. And well, if you look at the cyanobacterial counts, cells per minute before and after mud ball addition, well, there's no difference. Total phosphorus, there are only a few measurements before and after the mud ball addition. Well, there's no difference at all. And this is a picture of, these are pictures of the pond after the addition of mud balls. So massive green soup. Clearly, it didn't work out. So we thought case closed. To our biggest surprise, the same water authorities started another trial and claimed that these effective microbes would inhibit algae and stimulate plants and break down the sediment. So they had some information on social media about that, and you can see again mud balls being thrown in. This was interesting because now they came with a claim that it would break down sediment, and they referred to the test in the previous pond because it had proven to be successful in reducing sediment. Well, that's fantastic, of course. So we asked for the underlying data. We knew that the experiment was done to reduce cyanobacteria, which failed. But if you claim that it reduces sediment, well, we work a lot with sediment, so we asked several times for the data, but even the project leader claims had to acknowledge that these data do not exist. So to me, this is well, very weird that you make claims that you don't have the data, but these things apparently happen. And well, if you look at the pond head that was treated in 2019, well, this is just simply the graph lake concentrations in August when we paid a visit, and we saw very happy microcystis. These are pictures from the pond, so maybe that they seem to love the as you can see there. Well, one last about the bacteria, which is a formulation ACF32. ACF and aeration. We had the manufacturer, no, the one who was promoting it said it should be used in combination. We did, and well, if you compare the controls with the treatments, it's obvious that it did not reduce cyanobacteria. Actually, there was a promotion similar as we saw with aeration. So we didn't do anything there. Now going to source-oriented measures. So try to reduce the nutrient input by sort of treatment plants. We do our best in the Netherlands. Try to dismantle sewer overflows. This is also ongoing work. Well, we have a lot of runoff, etc., etc. And then you should not forget about internal loading. A lot of things can be done. Well, hypoleptic withdrawal. You know a lot about that. Here it's very fantastic to. I feel very privileged being able to visit this nice site on the campus lake here. The latest pipe is already running for, I think, 46 years now. So great. We can't do this in the Netherlands because of the we don't have the elevation differences that allows it to do so. Dredging is quite popular, and chemical fixation of phosphorus is also running, and also oxygenation being done. And you may also harvest biomass, harvest nutrients. It's not a way of removing nutrients from the system. While looking at dredging and excavation, well, dredging is done in the wet. Here you see some examples in small waters of dredging, and small urban waters can also be excavated as shallow. You just pump them dry, do complete reconstruction. That's often more efficient and easy to do. But dredging in small waters can also be simultaneous fish removal. And this is one of the sites where we paid a visit, and we noted that they had not removed fish. And if you start dredging and resuspend a lot of those anoxic sediment, well, this is what will happen. You get very low oxygen concentrations. As you can see here, this is oxygen before dredging, and this has happened after the first moment of dredge, so virtual no oxygen left. Also in the second dredge period, so short periods of anoxia. That, of course, is not so good for your fish. Alternatives for dredging can be all kinds of chemicals, and we do test a lot of different compounds: aluminium salts, iron salts, calcium, natural clays and soil, and modified clays. Just to give you a number here, and then of course testing these on sediment cores often gives a nice coloration depending on the compound you add. And once settled, as you can see here, they will form a tiny layer on top of the sediment cores. This is just phosphorus release experiment in a control. It's a heavily polluted urban water. There's a bentonite layer, bentonite as a physical control for phosphorus, which is a lanthanum modified bentonite. The zeolite layer, which is a physical control for Aquatic, which is a aluminium modified zeolite. Well, and you can see that both these compounds under oxic and anoxic conditions strongly reduce the sediment phosphorus release. So these are promising. We did these tests already a long time ago. We used phosphorus for upscaled experiments. Aquatic was not available for further testing, but it is available now, apparently. So it's interesting to further explore Aquatic as well. And the reason why it's interesting is because this is the ammonium absorption capacity of Aquatic against normal zeolite. So it can also absorb ammonium. So instead of immobilizing phosphorus, it can also reduce the ammonium released from sediment. So interesting compounds further to test. But as said, we continued. We did a lot of research with Phosphor, which was developed in the 1980s by the Australian CSIRO, Dr. Grant Douglas, and it contains lanthanum as its active ingredient, which is a very strong phosphate binder. It precipitates with phosphate form. Rhabdophane, or this is actually homology. This is rhabdophane, hydrated version. It's brought inside the bentonite layer, so it settles to the sediment, and it has a very strong binding capacity over a very broad pH range. So your aluminium hydroxides may start to dissolute around pH 9.5 or so. Your rhabdophane will still remain as mineral, which is beneficial if you work in shallow lakes, may experience regular high pH during summer months. We've done a lot of tests and experiments with this in the Netherlands, from enclosures to field experiments, etc. I'll not go into detail, just show you some of those compartments here, where we had some different combination, different things tested: dredging with polyaluminum chloride, some phosphor and polyaluminum chloride together. Well, it's obvious that all these measures in which the internal load was tackled had a good outcome, a good result. Biomanipulation itself, the water remained as turbid as in the control or as in the pond there. The advantage of using phosphor in this water over dredging was that by dredging we also, actually uncovered former agricultural soil, so internal load was becoming higher over time. And this is after 2 years. We do a lot of testing of products and techniques in our lab, ranging from mud balls and ultrasound and aeration and all kind of chemicals. Everything is brought on the market, and if things are promising, we try to do upscale experiments from small tubes all the way up to the lake, so to get more reality. But there are quite some cost involved there. So that's always the trade-off. What are we going to test and what not? It should be effective, it should be safe. And so we start small scale and then gradually move upwards if it's promising enough. We do so because we hope to fill the toolbox for our water managers with tools that they can use in their restoration of waters. But we always tell them that they should start with a system analysis, that they should start with getting insight in water and nutrient fluxes, but also what is the makeup of the water, how many sedimentary suspending fishes in there, for instance, and what is the lake or pond being used for, and so make a cost-benefit analysis. And that's the diagnosis, and that will help a lot in designing the measures. I'll give you an example of Lake Rauwbraak, an official swimming site, which is relatively small, 15 meters deep, former sand excavation. It started to suffer from bloom since 2000, and it was closed for 4 months, 2007, due to cyanobacterial blooms, which costed the authorities around 150,000 euros loss of income. First activities to do something was fish removal in the years 2001, 2003, because in the 1980s, grass carp had been introduced to remove Ilodia, so they turned the lake into a desert. Of course, a lot of those fish started to die off naturally in those years, and some remaining ones were removed and transplanted. There were 2 normal carp in there that had grown to sizes of 110 centimeters, 37 kilograms. They died naturally, and you can see one of them here. Her, actually, big bird, we called her. Bank restoration was done. This is a floater to protect the bank from erosion. A fence was built to protect planted hilophytes from the remaining grass carp. So a lot of effort was put in there trying to improve water quality. But all these remained not successful, and macrophytes did not return. They returned after grass carp had disappeared. Well, making a system analysis, there's no direct inflow there, no outflow, so we have to deal with precipitation, evaporation, and groundwater. And then we measured phosphorus in a lot of potential from a lot of potential sources. That all came to this bar diagram here. The black one is the sediment phosphorus release, by far the largest pool. So obvious is to tackle that one because precipitation, groundwater, borders, that's rather difficult to add. So what to do? Well, dredging turned out to be far too expensive. Also sand capping. Well, with iron chloride we have redox issues. For alum, there was no permit. And then, well, Phoslock remained as most promising in this case. The original idea was to add Phoslock in winter time, but because of the legal permit issues that took a bit longer, we could only apply it in April, and by then already an Affenzommern bloom had developed. So we decided to add a coagulant polyaminium chloride, for which we got a permit because it was a low dose. So the authorities agreed with that, and we could add it as a coagulant. And then together with Phoslock as a ballast, the idea was to sink the entire biomass to the sediment of the lake. And this is actually what was done. So on April 21st, 2 tons of Phoslock was brought into the water surface. The next day, some polyaluminium chloride was added, slightly buffered. And the flux with the ballast that we brought in the clay effectively sunk all biomass to the water bottom. And after that, some more Phoslock was added, meant to do some sediment capping or create an active barrier on the sediment to reduce the internal load. The Cyanobacterial, they were effectively flocked and precipitated out of the water. Well, you can clearly see this from the pictures here. You see the scums laying. There you can see the flux. The water was a little bluish afterwards because of the Phoslock clay, and cleared up within a month, crystal clear water. And no cyanobacterial chlorophyll remaining, very low chlorophyll concentrations. And later on that year, we had over 10 meters Zaki depth in the lake. Looking over the vertical, over the years, the total phosphorus concentrations in the water, the 2 years before intervention, we had relatively high total phosphorus. This was instantaneously reduced to very low levels, and even to below the level of detection of our equipment, which is here in blue, and remained low for many years. Now we see a gradual increase, which is also what we predict based on the ongoing, relatively small, diffuse external load that we cannot control. So we predicted longevity of this intervention of 10 to 15 years. And the lake is still in good condition now. It was still very clear this summer, but we recommended to the authorities to repeat with a lower dose this treatment, so you will keep the water in a good condition for being a swimming water. Well, chlorophyll was reduced. It's really moving upwards over the years. And also the share of cyanobacteria goes up. And in 2016, for the first time in spring, in the deeper water strata, we saw plankton excrudescence back with some water here. So this was our early warning signal that the lake is gradually moving backwards. It's not, so it took about 30, or even more, about 40 years for the first real eutrophication symptoms to appear in the lake. We expected that our intervention would last 10 to 15 years. This is the first early warning signal. So repeated intervention would be very wise in this water body. We can also see this from our estimated flux internal loads. Internal loading is also increasing over time, and this is not caused by phosphate becoming ineffective because these two phosphate treatments here, this is 640 days, we have even longer. So once it has bound phosphate, it will not release phosphate. This is in a lab experiment. But in situ, you have this external load coming in from groundwater from swimmers, so that will build up. So over time, repeated intervention is necessary, and this is what we refer to as maintenance. And for the authorities, it's quite obvious that they maintain the lawns, they maintain the beach, but they do nothing about the water. But that's their greatest asset, actually. People go there for the water, so they should also do maintenance there. And if they allocate a little bit of money for each season for that, it should be easy going for them. Given the time, I think I will skip our multiple measures example of Lake Grote Melanen. I also skip it because I've shown some of it already in the presentation some months ago. It's just to demonstrate that with a proper diagnosis, a good system analysis, and here with total phosphorus, you can see the annual peaks of internal loading, that with a whole package of measures, you can really reduce total phosphorus for many years. And you also notice here from Dungy Lake here, forgive me the name, in Olsztyn itself, that was treated 3 years in a row, 2001, 2003, with a Pax coagulant, and is in a very good condition until present. So it is possible to restore lakes using a whole package of measures. One thing that I need to point out about this lake is the fish biomass of fish, the carp and bream had been reduced. That's one of the measures. But after intervention, carp biomass was high again. And until now, the Water Authority already had to remove carp 5 times because fishermen keep on stocking the lake with carp. And these carp keep on resuspending sediment. So this is something that they don't want. So this example of Grote Melanen, where multiple measures were implemented, it cost for €2 million in total, with a strongly improved water quality and repeated fish removal there. It remains necessary, but it also points out that effect monitoring is crucial. Sometimes we forget about this, about the importance of monitoring. Well, to summarize, mitigation should always start with a system analysis, with a diagnosis, always. Do not do copy paste. Do not, when you hear something about success story, do not copy paste a method blindly onto your lake, because your lake probably will be different. Do a diagnosis first. And quite often in-lake measures are needed because of legacies and because of diffuse pollution problems. Because of diffuse pollution, you probably also need to think about repeated interventions, especially in agricultural areas. So if we would stop in my country with agricultural activities completely, because of this supersaturated soils, it will take decades before all the nutrients are being leached out. So this means that you need to do some interventions to counteract this ongoing diffuse load. It will not stop immediately. Then there are many magic solutions. Be critical about them, because quite a few may turn out to be literally throwing money into the water. Do a proper diagnosis and go for scientifically underpinned interventions. If you have an emergency and you need to target cyanobacteria directly, of course, there's a whole bunch of algicides or peroxides available, but you could also think about coagulants. Coagulants are also capable of glocking together the cyanobacterial monols, and you can sink them out of the water. That's also an advantage of. So this can also be an alternative to the use of algicides. But again, do the test beforehand. Test before acting. If you need to target phosphate, well, that's removing fuel for blooms. Dredging, of course, is very effective, but very costly, and you always need to check how much has been removed. Often you need to add a P binder in it. Well, Phosphoric is a very powerful P binder. Polyaluminium chlorides are also very powerful there. Thanks a lot for attention. I would like to point out that from our SIL working group on lake restoration, we do have a Facebook site, so please like it and post things on it. It's also important to inform our community about lake restoration work, so please tweet about that. And recently launched World Water Quality Alliance. They have an ecosystem work stream. It's free to join. Please do so. Join up there and also participate in the global survey of lake restoration in practice. It will be open, I think, until the end of the year. And, the EU website indicates October 15, but it will be open longer. So we try to collect as much information on lake restoration in practice. So what are the successes, what are the failures, and how does it come, to get more insight in what people encounter. Well, that was it from my side. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions or whatever, please feel free. But I can't see you guys, so I hope Renata can.
Thank you for your very interesting and very full of details presentation, and I enjoyed a lot to listen it. And if you have some questions, please let us know. Jeśli są jakieś pytania, bardzo proszę o zadawanie.
Okay, I have one question. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to ask you, what is the main source of funding of restoration projects in your country? I mean the whole scale projects.
Thank you, Micha. That's well, that's a difficult one because it varies a lot. So, in one of the upcoming lake restoration projects near Rotterdam, that's funded by the municipality, by the water authority, and also partly by the province. So often there are multiple funders there. It really depends. So, but most are done by owners. Usually that's an authority, often the municipality. So municipality contributes. Can also be private parties that own a certain water that contribute part of it. The water authority. The Lake Rauwbrake experiment we did, we had funding from our university in there, we had funding from the water authority, funding from the municipality, and funding from the province, so multiple funding agencies there. We have, well, I'm not aware of all the dredging projects, maybe they also get some European money, so I'm not aware of that, but most of those restoration projects I'm aware of have several funding sources.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Thank you for a question. Maybe someone else has a question. Okay.
Hello.
Oh.
I have a question about your experience with hydrogen peroxide. because I'm late, sorry, and I didn't hear everything. Have you any experience about its influence for another organism, for example, fish or birds? And
Yes.
hydrogen peroxide, of course.
Yes, yes, Jenna. That's one of the things you have to be aware about. Hydrogen peroxide, of course, oxidizes organic matter, and this means that it definitely may have side effects, particularly on zooplankton. And we did some experiments. I can. Oh wait a minute. I can show you here. So this is the survival of two cladostridans exposed to hydrogen peroxide concentrations from 1 to, in this case, 12 milligrams per liter, here 10. So you can see that these are really impacted by relatively low doses of hydrogen peroxide. This is also why the consultancy Arcadis and the University of Amsterdam usually recommend to do tests before on the zooplankton community and not to dose higher than 2.5 milligrams per liter. So yes, there are effects on zooplankton possible, and in this lake, they did find direct effects of hydrogen peroxide on zooplankton because the maximum dosing was 10 and 9 milligrams per liter. And well, I had some discussion about the sharp decline in fish biomass. I'm not convinced this is due to hydrogen peroxide, to be honest. But at least on zooplankton, effects are known. Yeah. But to be honest, zooplankton will return rapidly. We should also acknowledge that. So it's not a big deal if you have a temporal effect on zoopies, because they're quite resilient, to be honest.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Got one computer.
Yes. Okay. Do you have more questions? Czy są jeszcze jakieś pytania? If not, then we will finish our meeting. And thank you, Michael, for a very interesting presentation again, and I enjoyed a lot. And I hope that is a lot of information and that will be useful. That presentation will be posted by Polish Limnological Society. It was unfortunately, but members couldn't join that meeting, that recording. This presentation will be useful for our members, and Polish Limnological Society is also one of the organizers today of today's meeting. Okay, thank you very much, and we will end our meeting for now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.